Time, or are we good? No, we're
And this
good.
is what it should be like.
Amazing.
Okay, we're on.
All right.
Okay, so okay, why don't you we're going to talk about everything that happened at this week in Surfside. So why don't you start us off?
All right. Well, I mean, I don't know how anyone could possibly be unaware of this because it's been the front page of every major news source that I've seen for the past week. Unfortunately, last week, a a condominium in Surfside, Florida, which for those of you who don't know it's a very, very Jewish community, Surfside, Bell Harbor area, a little bit north of Miami Beach, a little bit south, North Miami Beach. There was a 12-story condo building that collapsed in the middle of the night out of nowhere. It didn't get hit by an airplane. There was no controlled demolition. It just collapsed and it killed. I mean, there are about 160 people that are considered to be missing, but everybody knows what that means. And it's a tragedy of unspeakable proportions. First of all, the the horror of it, the horror of dying in that way, or of being trapped in that way, which might even be worse, is harrowing. And the questions that everybody is thinking now. I mean, this was a Jewish building, and Jews we're built a little bit of a different way. Whenever any, God forbid, when a tragedy like this happens, we ask ourselves, we ask each other, we ask God, why? Like, why'd you do this to us? Why now? Why there? Like all these questions, they come up. And actually, my uncle mentioned to me last night. He said something that really rocked me. He goes, PTSD usually manifests in about 6 weeks. Is you're going to have kids, you're going to have high school students that right now seem absolutely fine, but when they get back to school in the middle of August and they come back, that's when it's going to hit them. And how are we going to deal with that? So just this horrible, horrible tragedy happened in our community, and that's what's going on.
Yeah, I was surprised. We had guests on Friday night here in Israel. We had guests on Friday night. We didn't know they're new neighbors that moved in. They're all of 23, married 3 months, and so we don't know each other at all. And we're walking home from shul together, and the husband says, "Where did you live in America?" And I said, "In Florida." So most Israelis think that like New York is next door to Florida, which is right next door to LA,
Right.
and then there's all these places they don't know, which might be out of nowhere. And immediately his question was, "How are you handling it?" And that was like,
Yeah.
whoa, so here in Israel, people are they feel they wish they could do more. They don't know what they could do. They're just sitting here, and they watch their brethren elsewhere suffering, and their like hands are tied, and they don't know how they. It's not even a question of like, can we send something? It just feels complete, and this is how I feel here: complete helplessness.
Right.
We all want to jump on planes and go there, but we also know how dumb and unhelpful that would be to crowd the area with just more people.
For those of us who live here, yeah, you have that here all the time. Everybody wants to volunteer. Everybody wants to do a drive. Everyone wants to bring something. They don't need any more canned food. Like you can bring them another 1,500 cans of beans, but they don't need more beans. They don't need more diapers. They don't need more books. What they need is an achama. They need a consolation, and I don't know, how anyone can give them that. But the feeling of the futility, the feeling of like you said, the helplessness, the impotence. We don't like feeling that way. We want to do something. What can I do? I get calls every hour on the hour. Rabbi, what can I do? Can't do anything. Can't do anything. There's nothing to do.
Yeah. And it's interesting because we've gone through a number of tragedies over the last, we had a prolonged tragedy of COVID, which affected every single person in ways that we can't even understand now. And then right when we thought we were getting past COVID, we had Meron. And then we had bleachers collapse here in Yerushalayim and Collinstone. And then we had, and then it just, then we had Hamas rockets and Arab riots it just seems like every time it seems like every time we're going to turn a corner, boom, something else happens.
Right. Punched in the face again.
Right.
Punched in the face again. So we would be remiss if we did not tell everyone about what the Rambam says. We've spoken about it before. We'll speak about it again. It bears repetition. The Rambam, Maimonides, says that when, God forbid, there's an ace tzara, there's a time of intense pain and sorrow and troubles that comes upon the Jewish people, to ignore it and just say, like, well, stuff happens. Hey, man, stuff happens, move on. That, the Rambam says, that's cruel. It's cruel to think that. It's cruel to move on. It's cruel to think that there's no connection between our actions and what happens to us. And that's not to say that anybody in that building deserved, no, that's not what we're saying at all. What we're saying is that we believe that there is a connection between what we do and our situation in general. And if so many horrible things are happening to us, we need to learn from it. We need to better ourselves. We need to make change in our lives. We need to use it as a springboard to get better and to be better. Because we can't change the past, but at least we can change the future. We can be a little bit better than we were yesterday.
Can we delve into that Rambam a little? Because I've seen over the last couple of days a lot of people who I believe are misunderstanding that Rambam, and I think it's a difficult Rambam to understand unless you really take it apart. The Rambam says, just to wind out, says that whenever any trouble comes upon the tzibor, meaning the Jewish community, that we wouldn't want to happen, whether it's war, which we've had this month, whether it's disease, which we've had, and whether it's tragedy, which we're suffering now. So the Rambam says that if you just say this is the way of the world, and don't recognize that you need to do tshuva, so then that's what you said. That's cruelty, and there's a lot of misunderstanding with that Rambam. There's a lot of people that see it, and you addressed it, that see it as causation. That because I have to do tshuva, and tshuva is a response to sin, it must be that this is due to sin. And also, since the Rambam says, and these are both, but I want to make it clear in case anybody steps off now, that's an incorrect reading of the Rambam. And another incorrect reading of the Rambam is that since he says that if you just say this is the way of the world, then you've missed you're missing the point, because you're not looking to God. And then people also misunderstand that and say what the Rambam is saying, and again, this is a misunderstanding, what the Rambam is saying is that if you ascribe it to human error, even if there is a human cause, then you're also mistaken. And I think both of those approaches are misunderstandings of the Rambam. In other words, it seems to be very clear in Meron, in Pal and Stolen, and again, there's no conclusive evidence of what's happened in Surfside. But
not yet.
But if that condo wasn't built properly or wasn't maintained properly, there is a lesson to be learned here that we need to follow nature and how the world works, and that's not a violation or inconsistent with what the Rambam is saying. What the Rambam is saying is that if your sole response is only, look, this isn't God, this is, and this has nothing to do with how we should react, this was simply poor building, then that's a problem.
Well, let's unpack that a little bit. When he calls it, you would think that a religious thinker would say that if you don't ascribe this to God, or if you don't repent, then it's evil. It's evil. It's bad. He doesn't say evil. He doesn't say bad. He says cruelty. He says it's achzar. It's achzari. Achzari means cruel. So how do you understand his categorization as, once again, for those of us who have come in late, the Rambam says that when a terrible thing befalls Klal Yisrael, befalls the Jewish people, and they just say to themselves, well, we're not going to fast, we're not going to pray, we're not going to take upon ourselves to repent, but rather we're just going to say it's the way the world crap happens, that is cruelty. How do you understand his categorization of cruelty?
So I think that addresses the second misunderstanding of the Rambam, is causation, where the Rambam is saying that that the response that a person should have is tshuva. So first of all, the response is build buildings better. That's the first response, and make sure that there's proper regulations, make sure that there are proper precautions being taken. That's number one. Number two, what the Rabbi is saying is, ultimately, the Jewish people should be, in an ideal world, protected by divine providence. Even if the building is built improper, even if the bleachers aren't installed improperly, and even if there's too much crowding in Meron, ultimately God should interfere with the ways of nature and stop any tragedy from happening. When that doesn't happen, it's because we didn't deserve that protection. Now, again, what leads up to deserve, different story, different discussion. But now my question is, I'm sitting here and I'm saying, we discussing, what should I do? And the answer is, what I need to do now is earn that divine protection, because we're so in need of it now. If just to get the nechama, to get help,
consolation,
with this, to get
and the
comfort, that's what we need. We need divine help.
But again, why
now,
the cruelty?
how do I do that? I go ahead and I reconnect with God, whether that's through study, prayer, repentance, all of that areas. I improve in whatever fault I personally have. Then I have that divine providence that protects me from further tragedy and provides that consolation. If I don't do that, and I solely go through nature and say, I just have to make sure to build buildings better, then I'm cruel, because I'm preventing the ability for divine providence to shine itself once again and protect us. That's what the Rabbi means by cruel, because I have the solution in front of me. I have the way of improving in front of me, and I refuse to take it. So that's cruel. It's the same way a doctor prescribes something to the head of a family, and he refuses to follow the doctor's directions. You're robbing your family of you. That's cruelty. And that's the same thing here. For a Jew to simply look at this and not improve on themselves, and not say, look at how many messages we're getting, that's not just ignorance, it's not just blindness, it's actual cruelty.
I agree with you. That's my understanding also, or at least that's one of them, as to how to understand the cruelty. Right? If you like you said, if you don't allow people to actually improve, then it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. And let's be very, very clear. That is not to say that anybody in that building deserved to die by being crushed. That is not what we're saying. And another thing that I would say, which I think is super important, even though everybody already knows this is not it's not merely a personal tragedy. Of course, the lives of the families that were shattered, that's a different level of tragedy than it is for you and for me, because thank God we sit here in our homes safe with our families, and those people unfortunately do not. And we're not being Madame Milsa the Milsa. We're not comparing this thing to that thing. However, the Jewish community, and not just the Jewish community in Miami, the Jewish community around the world feels that this was a tragedy for them personally. This affects all of us. It's not a local issue. This is a national issue. We feel this because we understand that this is on all of us. It's on all of us. We know that. That's how we're conditioned that way. That's our history. That's the way that we teach our children. We believe it, and it's very, very real. If something happens, God forbid, something like this happens to a Jew in Chicago, that relates to a Jew in Miami and a Jew in Richo and everywhere in between. It's all of us. It's not them. So anyone who wants to point fingers at Bal Harbor, I think, is very, very off. It's not what's happening.
I haven't heard anyone doing that, and I really hope nobody is. We're one people. Kol Yisrael Reivim Zeh B'Zeh is the line the Gemara uses, that we're all responsible for each other. Right. And I think that I'm going to disagree slightly with what you said. You're very emphatic in the point of, we're not saying it's the people in the apartment's fault. I'm not going to say that, because we don't know why God does things. So I'm not going to cancel out possibilities. My Rabbi, whose yurtzeit is tonight, or his first yurtzeit is tonight.
Really, so already it's 1 year.
Yeah. So a lot of emotions. So he's a survivor, and he wrote a book. About the first half of the book is his time in the Holocaust, and the second half of the book are stories of so the first half is his stories in the Holocaust. The second half is Musar, is rebuke to the Jewish people for causing the Holocaust. And you hear that, and and every chapter of the book is named after a verse in the curses section of the Torah about and you sit there and say, how could you blame the people? Okay, so we could never do that. We're not survivor. He's a survivor, but even so,
only a survivor could write a book like that.
Right, but even so, like you look at you say, and I've asked him the question tens of times. Even if you're a survivor, even if you're a Torah scholar, how could you say it's that maybe a prophet can say? And his line was very simple. It says, if you don't follow the Torah, this will happen, and then it happened. So if A equals, causes B and B is there, then that's because of A. So as much as we would, I'm not blaming anybody in Surfside. My point is, I'm not going to say it's not their fault. I'm going to say it's not a question. It doesn't matter to me. It's not something that I'm going to look at and say, should I point fingers or should I not point fingers? I'm saying I don't know God's ways of justice. All I know, and I have perfect faith, is that they are just. A lot of times I understand them. A lot of times I don't understand them. But I'm not gonna I'm not judging. There's a halacha, and I'm sorry for it.
That's
halacha
clear.
There's a halacha that says that you're not allowed to not only not contradict your parents, but you're not allowed to also agree with your parents, right? So that's very strange halacha, right? Not disagreeing, I understand, because that's a clear violation of honoring your parents.
It's an implication of a necessity of agreement.
Right. So who are you? Like you're nobody. You're gonna agree, right? Like imagine like you're sitting at a scholar's lecture and the guy comes up with this whole theory and you're like, yeah, that's right. Who are you? Like you're nobody. Like So that's that's an idea. So when you say like I'm not agreeing, when you're not judging, that means that you're not judging positively and you're not judging negatively, both of them together. So
yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said in theory. When it comes to this particular instance in practice, I'll tell you why I feel differently about it. When something happens to a very large group of Jews who don't have anything that binds them, obviously, other than their Judaism, for instance. We read in this week's portion, and also we read a few weeks ago about the people from Korach, about Adas Korach. So we don't know how many people were involved in Adas Korach, but they were all destroyed. It's a very, very famous Bible story. You can look it up on Wikipedia. You can look up Korach, and you'll figure out the story over there. But they all had something in common. They were all doing the same sin. They were all doing the same thing, and they were together as a group. There is nothing that groups these people together other than geography. They're young and they're old, and they're from America, they're from Costa Rica, they're from Cuba, and they're from absolutely everywhere. They're Orthodox, conservative, and Reformed. They're Hasidic, and they're secular.
And Gentiles.
Exactly, and Gentiles also. So what this looks like to me, and again, an experiential thing, because like you said before, we don't know. What this looks like to me is an example of where you find in the Torah something like a negef. A negef is a plague, but it doesn't mean plague as in the bubonic plague. It means when God brings some sort of bad thing upon the Jewish people that kills them across the board. And the way that's the word that the Torah uses for that is ketzef. Ketzef, the anger of God. There are different words for the anger of God. And in the Torah, if you study the Torah, you'll realize that if it has different words, then that means the words don't mean the same thing. There are no synonyms in Hebrew. Why would you have two words where one will do? And what the word ketzef, which again, as we said, is translated as God's anger, when the word ketzef appears, it does not mean anger. The word ketzef means froth, F-R-O-T-H, froth. In fact, if you get whipped cream in modern Hebrew is katzefet. It's foam. The word ketzef means froth and foam. And the character trait of foam is that it expands everywhere without judging. So where it says, when we find magefa, when we find plague and ketzef in the Torah, it's eino mavchin bein tzadik l'rasha. It does not differentiate between a person who's righteous and a person who's not. It's a decree against the totality, against the whole, against the organism. It doesn't differentiate this person or that person. That's what I would say.
Right. I completely understand where you're coming from. I just like, I don't like playing. I think that's reserved for prophets, or at least great scholars. And I don't find myself.
We're neither of those.
Right. So that's why I'm hesitant to say it's this person's, that person's fault. But again, I don't think it matters. I think the question isn't what caused this, except on a physical level, on a metaphysical level. I don't think the question is what caused it. I think the question is, how do we make sure it doesn't happen again? So on a physical level, the way we do that is by instituting stronger regulations, stronger inspections. And on a metaphysical level, I think it comes down to tshuva, and it comes down to improving on ourselves. And I think that really the way I'm a little. We talk about the Gemara talks about an orphaned nation, a nation without giants, without leaders, right? So if you compare it to the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. So at the time Moshe Rabbeinu, when we did something wrong, Moshe got up and said, "You've done something wrong." Today, we don't have a leader. We don't have somebody that the world respects, that Judaism respects, that sits there and says, okay, listen, this is the problem. We need to all do this.
Yeah.
And we don't even have that. We have a mass emotive type of reaction where, oh, this is such a tragedy, but there's no leadership that's telling us, okay, we need to do this. We need to strengthen our Shabbat observance. We need to strengthen our Torah study.
We do have that, but it's a bunch of people that are just spewing, because this guy says because the skirts aren't long enough, and that one says because people are texting on Saturday, and that guy says because they use the wrong language. But like you said, there's no central authority, there's no hive brain, there's no nucleus. I was thinking the word for fast, the word for a fast is a ta'anit. Obviously, there's tzom also, which means to fast, but when you institute a fast, it's called a ta'anit. A ta'anit. And for those of us who have a chush, a sense for Hebrew terminology, the word ta'anit means response. It comes from la'anot, to respond. It doesn't mean to answer, it's to respond. Because the purpose of a fast is not, to lose weight, to burn calories, or to do a cleanse. The purpose of a fast isn't about not eating, it's about responding. It's about rising to an occasion and saying something is wrong with me and I don't know what it is. And like you said, I don't have the prophet. So the prophet can't come to me and say, hey, Sprung, it's because you didn't do enough of this, you did too much of that, or we don't have that advantage. So that means we just have to really look inwardly, each and every one of us individually, and then obviously collectively also, and say, what can we do better? What can we do better?
Yeah, it's but I think I do wish I wish we had someone or a group that would take the reins and say, listen, we don't know what caused it, we don't know what brought it up, but this is our response. This has to be, our response has to be, even if it's things that are bein adam lechavero, that are between man and man, and not improving religious observance as we think of religious observance, of prayer, Torah study, to charity, things of that nature, but more of just the way that we converse with people today, especially people that we disagree with. This discussion, this whole show is about two disagreeing rabbis, we call it, right? But it's somebody wrote to me this week that we should change the name to two dueling rabbis. So I said it's better. It was something with a banjo and some song. And the person was a musician. I didn't understand what he was talking about. So there was some song with dueling. So two dueling banjos, maybe I wasn't familiar. So, but I said that no, because dueling, at least for Americans.
Oh, the devil went down to Georgia. That's for sure what he meant.
Okay, yeah. My love affair with music is very much beyond me. So I said that dueling for Americans is back to back 10 paces and you shoot each other. So that's not what disagreeing is. Our whole point is that we're not dueling, that we should disagree with respect and discourse and listening to the other person's opinion and understanding it and taking into account and considering it and then saying and then coming to a conclusion of and even so I see the logic what you're saying, but I disagree. But today that's gone. There's no there's no sense of Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai when they would debate. Right, so they had plenty of debates, and the reason why the Gemara says the reason why halacha is decided in favor of Beit Hillel is because Beit Hillel would teach Beit Shammai's opinion first. Have you ever
what does that tell you? Can you explain that to me for a minute, please? Tell everyone what it says, and then explain.
So it says that Beit Hillel would when they would teach their lessons, right, in their academy, they would first quote the opposing opinion of Beit Shammai, and they would go through the logic of Beit Shammai, and they would say, this is how Beit Shammai understands this Jewish law. And then they would say, okay, now that that's Beit Shammai, this is our opinion. It's either this is why we disagree with Beit Shammai, or just this is how we understand the area of Jewish law. This is how we came to our conclusion. And because halacha is supposed to be a battle, it's supposed to be coming up, but it has to be respectful. Beit Hillel showed that he understood halacha better because he would quote the other opinion first. Beit Shammai would just express his opinion, and then that's not the best way of teaching halacha. The best way of teaching halacha is seeing the other person's opinion. So
both Both
Both
sides. You gotta
sides.
have both sides to understand anything. If you only understand one side, you understand nothing.
So when was the last time we had a politician, or any political discussion, even between two citizens, that they said, let me explain the other side, and now let me explain why it's wrong, and in a way that's not bashing the other opinion, not bringing it up in order, what we call a counter, in order to destroy it, in order to bring it down, but in a way of respect, in a way of kavod. And that's something that we're missing. I wish there was a giant in our generation who would get up and say, Rabbi Akiva's students died because they were lo nagu kavod zelazeh. You talk about a magefa, you talk about a ketzef, right? That all of Rabbi Akiva's students who were all scholars, 24,000 scholars, were all wiped out in some sort of either persecution or a plague, depending on how you understand what happened. And that was because they weren't respectful towards each other. We're going through now. I mean, what else does God have to do? He needs to hire a plane to skywrite it on the sky for us? I sent you a plague. I sent you Meron. I sent you stolen. I sent you 4,000 Hamas rockets. I sent you Arabs in your streets rioting. And now I'm sending you Surfside. What else do you need to understand that the way that we've been carrying on? And I gotta tell you, I know I'm going on and on here, but I gotta tell you, I think that I've been thinking about this so much. What's preventing us from doing this? What's preventing us? And I think it's just comfort. We're so comfortable. Yeah, it's true. We're all pained, 100%. But come on, right? All of us are still planning our vacations. We're still going out to eat, right? The restaurants are full, right? We're fat as can be. We're enjoying our lives. So as much as it hurts, we're not really changing our lifestyles that much. We're very comfortable the way they are. So if any Tanit, when you talk about a fast day, what used to happen was that there's no rain, right? So what people used to do, they used to put on sackcloth and put ashes on their forehead, and they used to stop eating twice a week, right? And in fast days in Tshuva, that's a serious level of discomfort that we used to go through, pain, actual pain. If Chazal or rabbis who authored that tractate, that Masechta, saw how we were responding to this, they would be ashamed because we're not.
That's true, but it's also important to point out that the pasuk says, "Kiru levavchem va'al bigdeichem," which means tear your hearts, not your clothes. So we shouldn't think that, hey, if I put on some ashes on my head and go to the synagogue and rip my clothes and say some psalms, then God will make everything better. No, tear your heart, not your clothes. Yeah, you got to change. Right. You need to just improve just a little bit. So it's interesting because you could say, well, on the one hand, as you mentioned before, we don't know in particular what it is that we're doing wrong, because we're doing so many things wrong. So how do you know if we got to fix it here, we got to fix it there, what are we doing wrong? It doesn't matter. It's all about directionality. All we have to do is say that we want to get better. So what were we going to get better at? It doesn't matter. You get better at something, I get better at something, everyone gets better at something individually, and then collectively, we're gonna move the needle. You don't have to pinpoint the problem. It's not about that. There isn't any one thing. Just move. Get up and move. Take one step, do something better. Think a little bit more deeply. A little bit. Small differences make big differences. Small differences make big differences.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so we happen to have, thankfully, a lot of people watching today. So if anybody has questions, I feel like here is a good time to open it up. So whether you're watching on Facebook and you want to type in a question in the comments, or if you want to message me, or if you want to in the what's this called again, I'm blanking here.
Me too.
Clubhouse. In the Clubhouse, if you want to be a speaker, so you can raise your hand, I think is how it works, and then we invite you in. So Ernesto or Sammy or Art or Joshua, if you would like to ask a question, so this is a good time. If somebody has a question they want to ask, please don't be embarrassed, don't hold back. We'd love to bring you on here in the last 10 minutes, because I think that people do have questions here.
There's so many, and then there's so much pain.
Yeah.
There's so much pain. What are you supposed to say to people? You're not going to alleviate it. You're not going to make it any better. There's nothing you could say that makes it better.
But but at the same time, it's true. There's no magic formula The same way when you walk into a shiva house, we both have a friend, Yummy, and Yummy made a video, which I think was a work of genius years ago, which was, wrong
How
things to
not
say
to be phenomenal.
right, at a shiva house, at a house of mourning. And that video, it's hilarious, the video, but also, all of us that have gone to shiva houses have seen at least one of those lines being said, where, absolutely grates on you to watch that, and to see it happen. But at the same time, I think that one of the key things about mourning, that I've learned, at least in my time in the rabbinate, being at way too many shiva houses and officiating at way too many funerals, is the idea that it's true that there isn't one magic thing you could ever say to somebody, but there are many things that when we talk about it, the talking about it is what provides the that provides the comfort. And I think that it's very true. But and I'm sorry, because the arm around the shoulder and the comforting words, that it's going to be okay, that I'm suffering like you are suffering, the empathy, is what does bring the comfort. I think that is what brings the comfort. We're in the worst time of the Jewish calendar right now. It's unfortunate that it doesn't have the popularity that Yom Kippur does, and Rosh Hashanah does, and Hanukkah does, and Purim does. These are, even people that aren't that observant, observe those holidays. Pesach, it's a big joy. But these 3 weeks of destruction, of tragedy, of mourning, these 3 weeks, these are the perfect weeks for us to deal with a tragedy like this. I don't mean for the tragedy to happen. I mean for us to deal with it.
But again, like you said, right? It's not an accident. These things are not accidents. They happen to us. They're patternistic.
Right. They wrote happening a lot Gomer, and this happening right before. Like I said, I don't know if God needs to run billboards or he needs to take out Facebook ads for us to understand this message. But this is that's what we're experiencing now. And I think that these things, but after the 3 weeks are 7 weeks of comfort. The Shiva de Nechemta, those are you have 7 more weeks of leading up to Rosh Hashanah, where we read. These are based on the Haftorahs, that the Haftorah talks about comfort. Nachamu nachamu ami, my nation should be comforted. And so that's what so it's built into the system. But these are the 3 weeks that we don't shave, that we don't get haircuts, we don't have joys, we don't have weddings, we don't have we don't listen to music, and we have no joy during these 3 weeks. We don't even build extensions onto our houses in order that would make us happier, right? We stop all construction, everything. Even in my town here, where construction is so valued, and so it stops. That's it. There's no construction during this time. And the idea is that for the next 3 weeks we can sit and do tshuva. We can sit and repent, and we can sit and look at our lives and introspect and say, okay, I got the message, But then, in 7 weeks from now is a time of comfort. In 7 weeks from now is a time where 3 weeks from now, for the next 7 weeks, where that's and you talked about the PTSD that our students are going to experience. That a lot of the psychology that goes into getting over trauma is experiencing some sort of comfort. I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychologist, and I know nothing, and I don't want to pretend that I do. But that's the idea of having some sort of comfort. So again, if anybody has questions, and Dave, I appreciate the helping me with the dueling banjos from 1954. That was in the movie of Deliverance, and Dave Weaver wrote. But if somebody has a question, we're in our last couple of minutes here. So if somebody has a question, now would be the time that they could ask it. Okay, Rabbi, do you have any other last words that you want to bring up?
Honestly, no. I think we're going to continue talking about this topic for some weeks. It's the way that it seems things are going to be going. So I think it's important that we recognize also that there's an intellectual level that has to be contended with, and then there's an emotional level that has to be contended with. There are national implications, personal implications, familial implications, and we're going to have to deal with each one of those things compartmentalized. Otherwise, it's going to be the weight of the questions can be crushing and confusing and overwhelming. But if we could take sort of the next step once we experience that consolation that has to come first, the emotional peace, once we can get past that, however long that takes each one of us individually, it will be time to start separating the questions into their silos and dealing with them each.
Yeah. We're not, yeah. Maybe this generation is just gonna be the generation of trauma. It looks like,
I really hope not, because our great grandparents had it bad, and we're not looking forward to that again.
Right. Yeah. Okay, Rabbi Sprung, we should all have a nechama. We should have. You know what? I rarely, except for what Chazal write in, I rarely pray for outright miracles. But there's never been a time I've prayed more for outright miracles. I wrote about on Facebook yesterday. The Israeli soldiers, the search and rescue team. One of them, well, not one of them that went, but one of them that usually goes. They sent a very small team because it's not. I mean,
it's a recovery team, not a rescue team.
No, it's a search and rescue team, and it is a search and rescue team. It's not recovery. They're looking, and the commander yesterday said there's always hope. They found people before, after 8-10 days before they found people. So it's not right. So it's not, but I wrote yesterday. I said, imagine, and maybe this is good because we end off on a very positive note. I wrote yesterday, imagine if you're a Jew. You're stuck under the rubble for, and I can't imagine the hell that you're going through now. You're probably physically injured. You're traumatized. You're not eating. You're not drinking, and you're just sitting there, and you don't know what's going on above you. You don't know why nobody's finding you and nobody's picking you up. And imagine at some moment a rock above you or the wall, the cement is lifted, and you're in Miami. You went to sleep in Miami, right? You went to sleep in Surfside, so you know that you're in Surfside. You don't know what happened to you. You woke up in pain and whatever it was, through some crazy trauma of falling through, stories of building collapsing. And then you look up and you see an arm come through, and on the shoulder patch is an Israeli flag. And there's a Chayal's uniform. What would you think?
Halavai from your mouth to his ears, man.
So that's what I'm saying. So we're a nation of miracles. We are a nation protected by God. And if we can get people out of that building alive, and we should, the Gemara talks about when the executioner's sword is on your neck, don't give up in prayer. Don't give up prayer. The mayor of Surfside today, I posted this on my Facebook. So if you haven't seen this, you have to see this. The mayor of Surfside told a story, and I shouldn't really ruin it by telling it, but the mayor of Surfside. So
go watch it.
Watch it. Did you see it?
No.
So he tells
I will now. I'm going to watch it on your Facebook.
Yeah. It tells a story about finding a little girl sitting in front of the rubble yesterday, and he's a little Jewish girl. He said she was 12 years old. I have no idea. She has a parent in the rubble, and she's looking at her phone and mumbling, but the phone, she wasn't talking to anybody, and she was davening. And I don't think the mayor of Surfside is Jewish. I have no idea, but he's definitely not religious. And the effect it had on him to see, you watch the video. We're a nation of miracles. We are our mere existence is a nation of miracles. This, if ever there was a time that we need to experience miracles, we should have hope for miracles, it's now. We should not give up hope. We should pray. It doesn't mean that we have to be unrealistic, but it does mean that we can still pray for those miracles.
Philly,
let's hope.
Peace and love.